My 35th birthday had come and gone, and I was completely alone. I sat at the dining table staring at a cake that no one had touched, no balloons, no messages, nothing. The house felt colder than usual, not because of the winter air, but because of the absence of people who were supposed to care. I couldn't understand why my family would just skip this day, a day that was important to me. The hurt ran deep. I felt invisible, like I didn't matter to anyone who should have loved me the most. I tried to hold back tears, but they slipped anyway. Every year, I had hoped that maybe this time things would be different, that they would remember, that they would show me that I was important. But this year, it became clear. Maybe I had been expecting too much. Maybe they never cared. The thought stung more than I could say out loud. Jason, my husband, noticed immediately. He had been in the living room when I first came back from taking a quiet moment to myself. I tried to hide my face, but he didn't need words to understand. He came over and gently held my hand. "Emily, it's okay," he said softly. "You are not alone. I'm here." His voice was calm, steady, and filled with warmth. For the first time that evening, I felt a small flicker of comfort. He pulled a chair close and sat beside me. I leaned against him, letting the tears come freely this time. He didn't try to fix anything or tell me to stop crying. He just let me feel what I needed to feel. It was strange, realizing that one person's presence could make such a difference. While my family had chosen to ignore me, Jason was choosing to stand by me. That choice mattered. I stared at the cake again, feeling a mixture of sadness and shame. I had thought birthdays were a way to feel loved, to be seen. But now, I understood that love sometimes came from unexpected places. I had spent years looking for validation from people who never intended to give it. And here was Jason, showing me the kind of love that didn't demand anything in return. The loneliness and disappointment were still there, but now they were softened by something stronger, hope. A small part of me realized that maybe this day wasn't about the people who had ignored me. Maybe it was about recognizing who truly mattered. Jason's presence reminded me that even in the middle of betrayal, there could be kindness, loyalty, and love. I took a deep breath and wiped my tears. The hurt hadn't vanished, but I felt a little stronger. Maybe this birthday being skipped wasn't the end of the world. Maybe it was a turning point. And for the first time in a long time, I knew I wasn't completely alone. As I sat in the quiet of my empty dining room, memories from past birthdays started creeping in. Every year felt the same. My family would brush off my efforts, barely acknowledging the day, or make small, cutting remarks that left a sting I carried for months. One year, my sister Rachel had said my promotion was nothing special, as if she measured success differently. My brother Mark often reminded me how I never did anything right, comparing me to cousins who seemed to shine effortlessly in their eyes. Even when I tried to share good news, it was always met with dismissal or sarcasm. I began to notice the pattern, the way my accomplishments were never celebrated, the way I was made to feel small, even when I tried my best. At first, I brushed it off, telling myself I was overthinking. But over the years, the hurt added up, like small cracks in a wall that eventually weakened the whole structure. I remembered one birthday where I had worked all week to throw a small party for myself. I invited my family, hoping for even a simple happy birthday. Instead, they showed up late, criticized my decorations, and barely spoke to me. I had forced a smile, pretending not to notice, but that night I cried myself to sleep. That was when I realized this wasn't just forgetfulness, it was intentional. They didn't care. Jason sat beside me, his hand resting on mine. He didn't need to say anything at first. He simply watched me, letting me speak without judgment. When I finally whispered about my frustration, about feeling invisible for years, he nodded slowly. "Emily," he said softly, "I see you. I see what you've done, what you've accomplished, and how strong you are. Don't let them make you feel less than you are." His words felt like a lifeline. For years, I had waited for my family to notice me, to recognize my worth, but Jason was showing me something different. He wasn't just comforting me, He was planting a seed, reminding me that I didn't need their approval to feel proud or to stand tall. There was power in being seen by someone who genuinely cared, and that realization started to shift something inside me. I felt a mix of anger and clarity. Anger at the people who had quietly undermined me for years, and clarity that I didn't have to stay trapped in their world of judgment and comparison. For the first time, I imagined a different way to respond, not with tears, not with begging for attention, but with strength and strategy. I wanted them to see me, not because they deserved it, but because I finally deserved to be recognized. Jason squeezed my hand, and I leaned into him, feeling a quiet determination rising. Maybe this year wouldn't be like the others. Maybe this year, I could take control of my own story. And with him by my side, I felt like I just might. That evening, after the sadness of being ignored by my family had started to settle, I realized something important. I couldn't keep waiting for people who didn't value me to change. I had spent years hoping for their approval, but it never came. The thought was both freeing and frightening. I had to start focusing on my own happiness, on the life I wanted to live, instead of being hurt by people who didn't see my worth. Jason noticed the shift in me. He suggested we celebrate my birthday in our own way, just the two of us. At first, I hesitated, thinking it would feel empty without family. But then I realized it didn't matter. If I waited for them, I would always be disappointed. He planned a small dinner at home, with candles, flowers, and my favorite food. The thoughtfulness behind it made me feel seen and appreciated in a way I hadn't in years. That evening, the house was quiet except for soft music and the gentle clinking of dishes. Jason smiled across the table at me, his eyes warm and encouraging. "This night is for you," he said. "Not them, not anyone else. You deserve to feel special without waiting for anyone else to decide it." As we ate, he spoke carefully, almost casually, about the idea of taking control of how I allowed people to treat me. "Emily, you've been patient and kind for too long, even when they didn't notice. Maybe it's time they realize you won't let anyone walk over you anymore," he said. There was no anger in his voice, just quiet confidence. His words hit me differently than anything my family had ever said. It wasn't about revenge yet, it was about reclaiming my power, showing strength instead of hurt. I felt something I hadn't felt in years, pride and love for myself. It wasn't just because of the dinner or the candles, it was because Jason was showing me that my happiness didn't depend on anyone else. For the first time, I felt like I could make my own rules, set my own boundaries, and still be surrounded by love. The evening ended with us laughing over small stories, sharing memories, and enjoying the simple joy of being together. That night, I didn't feel lonely or overlooked. I felt seen, valued, and capable. I realized that the people who ignored me weren't in charge of my emotions anymore. My happiness, my worth, and my confidence were mine to protect and celebrate. As we cleaned up, I felt a quiet determination settle in my chest. This night had changed something inside me. I wasn't waiting for recognition or apologies anymore. I could create my own joy, and maybe, in time, they would finally see the person they had always underestimated. But even if they didn't, it wouldn't matter. I was finally taking control of my life, and for the first time in a long time, it felt empowering. A few days after my birthday, I went to pick up some mail in the hallway near my parents' house. I wasn't expecting anything unusual, but then I heard voices, Rachel and Mark, my sister and brother, talking loudly. At first, I thought I'd misheard, but as I paused and listened, the words became clear. "Can you believe she actually expected us to show up?" Rachel laughed, her voice sharp and full of mockery. "She's so dramatic. I mean, who even cares about her birthday?" Mark joined in, smirking. "I know, right? I can't believe we didn't go. That cake sitting there alone? Perfect. She totally deserved it." My heart sank. I froze in shock, barely able to breathe. I had thought maybe it was forgetfulness, maybe an accident. But now it was obvious, they had planned it. They hadn't just ignored me, they had deliberately stayed away to humiliate me. The betrayal cut deep. The people who were supposed to love me, to celebrate with me, had taken pleasure in my disappointment. I felt a wave of anger rise, mixed with sadness. All those years of being overlooked, dismissed, and compared to others, they had compounded into this moment. And now, hearing them laugh at my pain, it hit me harder than ever. I wanted to storm inside and confront them, to yell, to cry, to make them feel the hurt they had caused. But before I could act, Jason appeared beside me, as if he had sensed my turmoil even before I did. He put a hand on my shoulder and said quietly, "Emily, breathe. I know it hurts, I know it feels unfair. But right now, reacting with anger won't fix anything." His calm presence grounded me. He didn't minimize my feelings or tell me to let it go. Instead, he encouraged me to see the bigger picture, to think strategically. "You don't have to prove anything to them in anger," he said. "Let's show them your strength, your worth, and your happiness in a way that leaves them speechless. You've been patient for years. Now it's time they realize that." For the first time, I felt the stirrings of a plan, not revenge in the cruel sense, but a way to reclaim control. It was about showing them that I was no longer someone they could ignore or belittle. The hurt was still there, but now it was mixed with determination. I could take what they tried to use against me and turn it into power. Jason stayed with me that night, talking through ideas, helping me focus on what mattered. It wasn't about revenge that hurt anyone physically or publicly. It was about emotional strength, about reclaiming my dignity and proving that my life didn't depend on their approval. The seed of that quiet, satisfying power had been planted, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could grow it. By the time I left the hallway, the anger had settled into resolve. I wasn't broken by their betrayal, I was awake to it, and I was ready. And with Jason by my side, I knew I wouldn't face it alone. After overhearing Rachel and Mark, I realized that reacting impulsively would only satisfy them. Jason and I spent the next few days talking quietly about what to do. We didn't want to humiliate anyone or create a scene. Instead, we focused on a different approach, one that showed strength and dignity. It had to be subtle, smart, and unmistakable. My life would not revolve around their approval. Jason encouraged me to think carefully before responding. "Every word you say, every action you take, can send a message," he said. "But it doesn't have to be loud. Quiet confidence is far more powerful than anger." His calm words helped me breathe through the frustration, to turn the hurt into something useful. I started imagining ways to reclaim my control without stooping to their level. We made small plans. For now, it was about practice, learning restraint when I felt the urge to snap, to lecture, or to cry in front of them. Every time I thought about confronting them, I paused and asked myself, will this show my strength, or give them satisfaction? Slowly, I began to see a pattern. Let them talk. Let them assume I care too much. I didn't have to prove anything. My confidence would speak louder than their words ever could. Jason helped me see my own worth. He reminded me of all I had achieved, quietly but meaningfully, and pointed out moments I had overlooked in my own life. "You've built a good career, a warm home, and a life full of meaning," he said. "You don't need their recognition for that. You've already done it all." Each conversation strengthened me. The sadness and frustration were still there, but now they were accompanied by a growing sense of power and control. During this time, I also practiced subtle gestures that carried meaning, maintaining composure when the topic of birthdays came up, responding to comments with calm politeness instead of irritation, and letting Jason take the lead in highlighting my achievements naturally in conversation. It was strange at first, restraining the urge to defend myself or point out past betrayals. But slowly, the restraint became empowering. I began to notice a shift in myself. Hurt was still there, but confidence was replacing it. I no longer felt the need to chase approval. I felt lighter, stronger, and more in control than I had in years. The quiet revenge wasn't about showing them pain, it was about showing them that I was no longer theirs to manipulate. My happiness and self-respect belonged only to me. By the end of the week, I could feel it, the first real sense of calm power. I wasn't angry or broken anymore. Instead, I was patient, observant, and ready to take the next step. Jason's quiet guidance, combined with my own determination, had transformed my hurt into strength. And now, I knew exactly how to move forward without giving them the satisfaction of seeing me fall. A few days later, I decided to invite my family over for a casual post-birthday dinner. I kept it light in my message, making it sound like nothing special, just a small get-together. They accepted immediately, probably assuming it would be the same old dynamic, me trying to please them while they judged and dismissed everything. I didn't correct their assumptions. I had learned by now that the more they expected, the more they would underestimate me. When Rachel and Mark arrived, they were smug and full of quiet superiority. Rachel made small jokes about my late celebration, and Mark leaned back in his chair, smirking like he owned the room. I felt a flicker of the old hurt, but I refused to give it power. I greeted them calmly, smiling politely, letting them think they still controlled the narrative. Jason stayed close to me, calm and supportive, quietly guiding the evening. He had helped me plan subtle details that would reveal their hypocrisy without ever saying a word directly. The seating arrangement, the little reminders of my achievements around the house, and even the small decorations were all carefully placed. Each one was a quiet signal: my life was full, meaningful, and independent, whether they acknowledged it or not. At first, my family continued their usual behavior, mocking in small, casual ways, testing whether I would react. But I didn't. I answered their jabs with calm politeness, never raising my voice or showing frustration. Jason occasionally shared stories about my recent successes, projects at work, personal milestones, small acts of kindness I had done in the neighborhood. He did it naturally, as part of casual conversation, not as a lecture. And slowly, I saw it, the smug expressions on their faces began to falter. They were confused, unsure how to react. They expected Emily to be the same person they had dismissed and ignored for years. But I wasn't that person anymore. I was calm, confident, and quietly commanding. Every small detail Jason had helped me set up worked together to show them something they hadn't realized: I didn't need them, and their neglect didn't define me. The tension in the room grew, subtle but unmistakable. Rachel tried to make another sarcastic comment, but it fell flat. Mark shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I watched them carefully, noticing the unease forming in their eyes. They were sensing, for the first time, that I had taken control of the situation. I didn't have to yell, argue, or confront them directly. My composure, combined with Jason's quiet support, was already sending a stronger message than any words could. By the end of the evening, I felt a mix of relief and quiet triumph. My family had walked in expecting the same old Emily, the one they could dismiss and control. But they left feeling unsettled, realizing that I had changed. The hurt from their betrayal was still there, but it was now mixed with a powerful sense of authority and self-respect. For the first time, I felt truly in charge of how they perceived me, and how I allowed them to affect my life. As the evening went on, I realized it was time to speak, but I didn't rush or act out of anger. I took a deep breath and began to share pieces of my life that my family had ignored for years. I talked about moments when I had struggled at work, when I had faced challenges they never acknowledged, and how I had worked hard to overcome them. I spoke about the little victories I had quietly achieved, the times I had grown stronger despite their criticism and neglect. Jason stayed close but let me take the lead. He didn't interrupt or try to add anything unless it was to gently encourage me if I faltered. His quiet support made me feel safe and confident. For once, I didn't feel like I was fighting alone. I could speak my truth clearly, knowing I had someone beside me who truly valued and respected me. As I shared these stories, I could see their expressions begin to shift. Rachel stopped making jokes, her smile fading into something uncertain. Mark's usual smirk disappeared, replaced by a tense, uncomfortable silence. They had never heard me talk like this before, calm, composed, but honest and firm. My words weren't angry or loud, but they carried weight because they were real. They couldn't dismiss them, couldn't laugh them off, and couldn't twist them. I continued, telling them how it felt to be overlooked, how their comparisons and small betrayals had hurt, and how I had learned to rise above it all. I didn't accuse them with harsh words. I simply laid out the truth, letting them see the consequences of their actions without needing to yell or argue. My dignity was my weapon, and it was stronger than any argument they could make. Jason occasionally nodded from beside me, his presence quiet but reassuring. It reminded me that I wasn't just speaking for myself, I had a partner who believed in me completely. That gave my words even more power, even more calm authority. I could feel the energy in the room changing. Their usual control over me was gone. By the end of my stories, my family looked uneasy. There was guilt in their eyes, a sudden awareness of the ways they had hurt me. But I didn't give them satisfaction by showing bitterness or anger. I simply smiled softly and thanked them for listening. The contrast between their discomfort and my calm confidence was unmistakable. For the first time in years, I felt truly free from the weight of their judgment. I had not needed to raise my voice, to cry, or to beg for recognition. My happiness and self-respect had become visible, overshadowing the cruelty they had once tried to impose on me. In that moment, I realized that emotional revenge doesn't have to be loud, it can be quiet, steady, and infinitely more satisfying. My family had been given a clear message: I was no longer the person they could diminish, and my life would continue on my terms. As the conversation continued, my family began to stumble, trying to explain or justify their behavior. Rachel muttered something about being busy, and Mark tried to laugh it off, but their excuses sounded weak, even to them. That was when I decided it was time to share something they had never noticed before, something they had ignored or dismissed countless times. I want to tell you something important, I began calmly. Since my last birthday, a lot has changed for me. At work, I was promoted to a position I've been working toward for years. I've been able to take on projects I never thought possible, and I've even started volunteering for causes that mean a lot to me. My life has grown in ways I'm proud of, and I wanted to share that with you. Their faces shifted instantly. Rachel's smugness faltered, and Mark's smirk disappeared completely. I could see them processing, for the first time, that the life they had tried to belittle was moving forward without their recognition or approval. They realized that their absence, their jokes, and their dismissals had never stopped me from achieving my goals or finding happiness. Jason spoke quietly but deliberately, adding subtle weight to the moment. Emily has worked incredibly hard to reach this point. It hasn't been easy, and it hasn't depended on anyone's approval but her own, he said. His tone was calm, but every word carried a quiet power. He didn't need to call them out or confront them directly, the message was clear. Emily's life was full and meaningful, and their neglect hadn't mattered. I watched their expressions shift from discomfort to something closer to guilt. They had spent so many years assuming they held control over my feelings, and now they could see that the opposite was true. My achievements, my happiness, and my independence were proof that I had grown stronger despite their attempts to diminish me. It wasn't revenge in the traditional sense. I didn't raise my voice, humiliate them, or make them feel small on purpose. My power lay in my ability to thrive while they remained blind to the strength they had overlooked. My success, my calm confidence, and my quiet joy were more powerful than anything I could have shouted or demanded from them. For the first time in years, I felt fully in control of the situation. Their judgment no longer had the ability to affect me. My accomplishments weren't about proving them wrong, they were about living my life fully, authentically, and without fear of their opinion. That realization brought a sense of peace I hadn't known before. By the end of the evening, it was clear that something had changed. The family had arrived expecting the same old Emily, vulnerable, overlooked, and easily dismissed. Instead, they found a woman who was calm, confident, and thriving. The subtle twist of showing them what they had missed was enough to shift the balance. My life didn't need their validation, and my quiet strength spoke louder than any argument ever could. The days after the dinner felt strangely peaceful. My family reached out one by one, offering apologies for missing my birthday and for the way they had treated me in the past. Rachel said she hadn't realized how much her words had hurt, and Mark admitted he had been selfish and careless. Their voices were hesitant, almost unsure, as if they weren't used to admitting mistakes. I listened to them calmly. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, and I didn't let their words pull me back into old feelings of hurt or anger. I thanked them politely, acknowledging their apologies, but I made it clear to myself that this didn't erase the years of neglect. I wasn't going to let them manipulate my emotions again. My feelings, my dignity, and my happiness were mine to protect. Jason was there the entire time, quietly supportive. He never tried to speak for me or overshadow my voice, but his presence reminded me that I didn't have to face any part of this alone. We had grown closer through all of it, not just as a couple, but as partners who could navigate challenges together. That connection gave me confidence I hadn't felt before, a sense of security that made the family's words feel less powerful. For the first time, I could see the real impact of everything we had done. The emotional satisfaction wasn't in making them feel guilty or forcing them to apologize, it was in reclaiming my life, my self-respect, and my joy. I could live fully without depending on their approval, and that independence was far more rewarding than any confrontation or argument could have been. I began to notice subtle changes in my family too. They seemed more cautious around me, aware now that I was no longer someone they could easily dismiss or belittle. But even as they adjusted, I remained focused on myself, not on controlling them. My happiness, my confidence, and my calm authority were now the central parts of my life. Jason and I started planning small things together, trips, dinners, projects at home, simple joys that strengthened our bond and reminded me of the life I had built. Each shared laugh, each quiet moment of connection, reinforced the lesson I had learned: true power doesn't come from anger or manipulation. It comes from patience, integrity, love, and the courage to protect your own heart. Looking back, the betrayal no longer felt like a burden. It had become a turning point, a moment that showed me what I was capable of. I had faced hurt and neglect, and instead of being crushed by it, I had turned it into strength. My family's apologies were a side note, the real victory was my independence, my dignity, and the life I had created with Jason by my side. I realized that walking away from manipulation and focusing on my own happiness was the most satisfying form of revenge. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was lasting. My life, my confidence, and my joy were untouchable, and that truth would carry me forward, no matter what anyone else thought or said. Looking back on everything that had happened, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. For years, I had allowed the way my family treated me to affect my mood, my confidence, and even my dreams. But this time was different. I had faced the hurt, the betrayal, and the humiliation, and I hadn't let anger or bitterness take over. I realized that I had the power to choose how I responded, and that choice had made all the difference. My 35th birthday had been skipped, and my family had humiliated me in their own subtle ways. But instead of letting it break me, I had used the experience to grow stronger. I had learned to protect my emotions, to value myself, and to build a life that didn't depend on their approval. That understanding gave me a quiet confidence I had never felt before. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. Jason's support had been the cornerstone of everything. He had seen my pain, encouraged me to act with patience and strategy, and helped me find my own strength. He didn't need to fight my battles for me, he simply helped me see that I was capable of handling them myself. Together, we had created an environment where I could reclaim my dignity and show, without words or drama, that my happiness and self-respect were untouchable. I thought about how different this experience had been from any other time I had been hurt by my family. Usually, I had reacted emotionally, letting their neglect and criticism control me. This time, I had responded thoughtfully, with calm and purpose. I had set boundaries, communicated my feelings clearly, and allowed my actions, my confidence and composure, to speak for me. The result was far more powerful than any confrontation or argument could have been. In the quiet moments after the family gathering, I felt a sense of peace that had been missing for years. I had faced betrayal, acknowledged the pain it caused, and used it to grow into a stronger, wiser person. I didn't need their recognition or approval anymore. My life was mine, and it was full of love, purpose, and joy. This experience taught me an important lesson: real strength doesn't come from revenge, yelling, or trying to punish those who hurt you. True power comes from patience, self-respect, integrity, and the courage to walk away when others try to control you. By protecting my heart and focusing on my own growth, I had reclaimed everything they had tried to take from me: my dignity, my happiness, and my peace of mind. As I looked at Jason, smiling beside me, I felt grateful and empowered. Together, we had turned a painful situation into a source of strength. And I knew that my story could inspire others who had faced betrayal, reminding them that they too could walk away strong, confident, and in control of their own lives. I had taken what could have been a painful memory and turned it into a triumph. And for the first time in a long time, I truly felt free.